I was alone in my small apartment when the tapping began. It was just after midnight, and the silence was oppressive, the kind that makes your ears ring. I thought it was my imagination at first, the product of too many horror movies and a wild imagination. But as the tapping continued, I knew it was real. It was coming from the walls, a rhythmic pattern that seemed to mock the stillness of the night. Tap. 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 I tried to ignore it, to focus on the book I was reading, but the sound grew louder, more insistent. My heart raced, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I was not alone. I put the book down and stood up, straining to hear where the tapping was coming from. It seemed to be moving, shifting from one part of the wall to another. I walked slowly around the room, my eyes darting to every shadow, every dark corner. The tapping stopped abruptly, and for a moment, the silence was worse. I held my breath, waiting for it to start again, but it didn't. Instead, there was a soft whispering, like someone speaking just out of earshot. I moved closer to the wall, pressing my ear against the cold plaster. The whispering grew louder, and I could make out words, though I couldn't understand them. It was like a foreign language, something ancient and guttural. I pulled away, my skin crawling, and backed into the center of the room. The whispering stopped. And for a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own ragged breathing. Then, the tapping resumed, louder and more frantic than before. It seemed to be coming from inside the walls, moving rapidly from one side of the room to the other. I grabbed my phone and dialed my best friend, Mark. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy and annoyed. "Hey, it's late. What's up?" "Mark, there's something in my apartment." "I think it's inside the walls," I said, my voice shaking. There was a pause on the other end of the line, then a sigh. "Come on, man, it's probably just the pipes or something. You know how old buildings are." "No, it's not the pipes. It's tapping. And whispering. I can hear it moving around." Mark sighed again. "All right, I'll come over. Just give me a few minutes." I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the walls. The tapping continued, a relentless assault on my nerves. I tried to block it out, to focus on Mark's arrival, but it was impossible. The sound was everywhere, surrounding me, closing in. I felt like I was going insane. When Mark finally arrived, he looked tired and annoyed, but one look at my face and his expression changed to concern. "Okay, show me," he said. I led him to the living room, where the tapping was now coming from the ceiling. Mark listened for a moment, then shook his head. "It's probably just rats or something. Maybe a bird got stuck in the vents." "No, it's not rats." "Listen," I said, pressing my ear against the wall again. Mark hesitated, then followed my lead. His eyes widened as he heard the whispering. He pulled away quickly, his face pale. "What the hell is that?" "I don't know. It started about an hour ago. It moves around, and the whispering. It sounds like it's saying something, but I can't understand it." Mark frowned, his brow furrowing. "All right, let's check the vents. Maybe we can find out what's making the noise." We spent the next hour searching the apartment, checking every vent, every crevice where something could be hiding. But we found nothing. The tapping and whispering continued, growing more agitated, more insistent. It was like whatever was inside the walls knew we were looking for it, and it didn't want to be found. Finally, Mark sat down on the couch, running a hand through his hair. "This is crazy. I don't know what's going on, but we can't stay here. Let's go to my place for the night. We'll call someone in the morning to check it out." I nodded, relief flooding through me. We grabbed a few essentials and headed for the door. But as we stepped into the hallway, the tapping stopped. The silence was deafening, like a weight pressing down on us. We paused, looking back at the apartment, and for a moment, I thought I saw something move in the shadows. But when I blinked, it was gone. We hurried out of the building, the cold night air a welcome change from the oppressive atmosphere inside. Mark's apartment was only a few blocks away. And we made it there in record time. Once inside, we both collapsed on the couch, exhausted and shaken. What do you think it was? I asked, breaking the silence. Mark shook his head. I have no idea. But whatever it wasn't normal. Maybe we should call the landlord in the morning. Get him to check it out. I nodded, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't help. Whatever was in my apartment wasn't something that could be fixed with a simple inspection. It was something old, something evil. And I had a feeling it wasn't going to let me go so easily. We tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I heard the tapping, the whispering. It echoed in my mind, a relentless reminder of what was waiting for me back home. I tossed and turned, the events of the night replaying in my head. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had made a mistake, that we should have stayed and faced whatever was inside the walls. When the morning finally came, I felt like I hadn't slept at all. Mark looked just as tired, dark circles under his eyes. We called the landlord and explained the situation. He promised to send someone over to check it out, but I could tell he didn't believe us. Who would? We spent the day at Mark's place, waiting for news. The hours dragged on, and with each passing minute, my anxiety grew. I couldn't stop thinking about the apartment, about the thing inside the walls. What if it followed us? What if it was already here, hiding, waiting? Just as I was about to suggest we go back and check for ourselves, my phone rang. It was the landlord. I had someone check your apartment. They didn't find anything unusual. No signs of rats or birds. Everything looks normal. I felt a chill run down my spine. But the tapping, the whispering. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it was just your imagination. Sometimes old buildings make strange noises. I wanted to argue, to make him understand, but I knew it was useless. Thanks, I said, hanging up. Mark looked at me, his expression grim. What now? I didn't have an answer. The thought of going back to the apartment filled me with dread, but I couldn't stay at Mark's place forever. We had to face it, whatever it was. That evening, we returned to my apartment. The moment we stepped inside, the tapping resumed, louder and more frantic than before. The whispering was clearer now, more distinct. I felt a cold chill settle over me, and I knew we had made a terrible mistake. We tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. It was like it was sealed shut, trapping us inside. Panic set in, and we banged on the walls, screaming for help. But no one came. The tapping grew louder, the whispering more urgent. It was like the walls were closing in on us, the darkness pressing down, suffocating. In the midst of the chaos, I saw it. A figure, dark and shadowy, emerging from the wall. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its mouth moved, forming words I couldn't understand. Mark saw it too, and we backed away, our hearts pounding. The figure moved closer, its presence overwhelming. I felt a cold hand brush my cheek, and I screamed, the sound echoing in the small apartment. The tapping stopped, replaced by a low, guttural growl. The figure loomed over us, its eyes burning with an otherworldly fire, and then, everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor, Mark beside me. The apartment was silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The figure was gone, and the door was wide open. We scrambled to our feet and ran, not looking back. We never returned to the apartment. I moved in with Mark temporarily, and eventually found a new place. But the memory of that night haunts me. I can still hear the tapping, the whispering, echoing in my mind. I don't know what it was, or why it chose me. But I do know one thing: some things are better left alone.